Hi, I'm John Paul, and a really warm welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm delighted to be continuing to look at the process of therapy training, and actually, particularly today, looking at the potential challenges of therapy training. It's been, 16 or 17 years since I started, so obviously a long time ago. And I think as well, the therapy training will have moved on a bit then. So I'm absolutely delighted to have on somebody who's training to be a therapist, counsellor, and her name is Charlotte Battista. Charlotte, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm really excited. Thanks.
Fantastic. Good, good, good. I guess, can we just start? I will often ask people that come on just some background about why you chose to become a therapist. What drew you to it?
So, I mean, if I think about when I first kind of stumbled upon this career path, I was in my early 20s. I'm still in my 20s now,
Sure.
but I was in my early 20s and I knew that I really, really wanted to go to university. My dad is a mental health nurse. He's involved in safeguarding in the NHS. So I think that's just a career that I was always really surrounded with, and I had a bit of an interest in it. So I thought, you know what, maybe I'll try being a mental health nurse. So actually, I went for an interview at Northumbria University, and I don't know if they saw something in us that maybe
Right.
I didn't see myself, but they said, actually, we think that maybe you would be more suited to the counselling degree.
Mm.
So that's when I really first considered it, because before then, it just had never really dawned on us. I
Mhm.
think it's not a career path that really gets discussed at career fairs in school. So before that, I'd never ever considered it whatsoever.
Mhm.
And then fast forward, I decided my degree wasn't enough. It was just in counselling, but it didn't actually allow us to practice ethically with clients on a one-to-one basis, and call myself a counsellor. I know that people can do that, but I didn't want to do it the wrong way. So I decided to enroll at a college in Durham in the northeast where I'm from and do an integrative counselling course. Yeah, I'm nearly at the end of that now. So
Because one of the things that confuses people as well is there's all the different options for coming in. There's master's degrees, diploma, which are foundation year and diploma, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. Just in terms of what you've done, then is it 3 years part time? Are you in the third year then? Is that
So this is 2 years part-time. And I think, kind of like you said, it's sometimes it's not really very clear. I certainly found it really confusing when I was trying to figure it out, which way do I go about this? What path should I take? Up in the Northeast, there isn't any options to do a master's degree, or at least there wasn't when I was looking, because ideally I would have just done that, already having a undergrad degree, but I couldn't find anything. So this was kind of the next best thing,
okay?
going back and doing a foundation degree.
Mhm. Okay, so it's 2 years, and when do you finish then?
So my teaching finishes in May
Mhm.
of this year, so a couple of months. I'm really excited just
Yeah.
because it's kind of stressful. I suppose that maybe leads on nicely to some of the challenges, but yeah, I'm ready to be done now. I think it's been a long time coming.
What's the plan for you? Is it to go into private practice, or do you want to be employed, or a mixture of both?
So I'm slightly unsure at the minute. I think for me, I know that early in my career, I really do thrive from being part of a team. I really want to learn from people who are in senior roles compared to me, and just have a bit of a buffer, I suppose, of being able to kind of chat to people about the profession. And I think that jumping straight into private practice, you're lone working and you don't always have that kind of team structure. Obviously, you've got your supervisor, which is great, but for me, I'm not sure that that would be enough.
Mm.
However, it's not something that I'm completely ruling out, private practice. It could be that I find a role that's full time, and then I do maybe a couple of evenings a week just to start building myself up at some point. But if I'm totally honest, I think me going into private practice probably won't happen for at least around 6 months, just because I want to give myself a little bit of a break. Because at the minute, my working week looks like full-time work, as well as uni, as well as placement 3 times a week. and that's mainly on evenings. So I just want to have a bit of a rest, if I'm totally
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, let's look at the course. Perhaps also looking a little bit at qualification as well, but I guess that's jumping on a bit. So should we look at the course and what that's been like and the kind of
honest.
struggles, as you say, the time commitments, doing it along with a full-time job, in your case, placements,
Yeah.
and perhaps also the commitments as far as essays, the academics, and I guess the psychological thing of going through a counselling course. It's
Yeah.
there's all that personal development stuff as well. So what has it been like? And I know it is not. You want to continue doing it, so it's not as if the whole thing has been some relentless struggle. There are obviously things that you love about it and enjoy about it, but from this point of view, it's interesting for people coming in to really, from the point of view of balance, know what those struggles might be in someone's experience.
I want to start off by saying that I love my client work.
Yeah.
Love it. And I don't want to put people off. But honestly, training to be a counsellor has been really difficult, in my experience, anyways. I think the fact that it just costs a lot. I don't know if other people find this, but I mean, you've got your tuition fees, but then on top of that, there are some what I would consider hidden costs to the profession that I don't think these training providers are always transparent about. And I've spoken to a few different people who have confirmed that, and they've been on different courses to me. But things like the cost of personal therapy. Now, I was really lucky with my course because I only actually needed 12 hours, which is still, it was still a fair amount of money. And I think for someone who's like me, who's in the position where they're in their early career, they don't necessarily have a lot of money to spare. Still paying for 12 hours of therapy was quite a lot, and it was quite a hit in my bank balance, if I'm totally honest. And then there's the supervision costs when you are practicing at placement. So I get supervision every 2 weeks. Luckily, obviously, there's concessions for students, so it is a little bit cheaper. But even things like, parking at placement 3 times a week and driving all the way to uni, it doesn't cost loads, but actually when you stack it up, it can become quite a lot.
Of course, times 40 or something, times two or whatever. I mean, I was talking to somebody, she's doing a 5-year part-time, the same one I did actually, a foundation year and a diploma, and he worked out the cost to be about £45,000 over the cost of that period. And he said actually tuition is 56% of it. There's another 44%, which is about the therapy, because there's 40 hours a year over the course of that, but also travel, all those kind of things. They are, petrol, they are a cost, as you say, a hidden cost, aren't they? So as we're seeing as well, you're doing yours in 2 years and it's less therapies. You can choose to do courses which cost less, but it's really something that, firstly, it needs to be factored in. It's important to think about, or it makes life more stressful during it, doesn't it? If these costs are coming up, it just adds to stress during a period where somebody needs to be in a place, really, when they're training, that they're not worrying that much about other things. Yes, I'm glad you've raised it. Most people will just look at the tuition fees.
Yeah, and I think, like I say, I don't think training providers are always necessarily as transparent as they should be with it. For me as well, it's just me. It's not like I've got a husband or a partner or whatever who I can maybe lean on for support. I've got parents and they're great, but I feel like at this point in my life, I don't want to be asking them for money. So I think some consideration for that from training providers. We're already paying thousands of pounds a year. It would be great if they would say, we will contribute something to your supervision or your personal therapy. I don't know how that would work, but it would be lovely to be able to see that, considering the amount of money that people are paying.
Yeah, because as well, I contacted you because I saw you posted something on LinkedIn in response to what somebody was saying about placements and how difficult it is to find placements, which we'll come on to, I think, as well. But one of the things is that somebody was saying about how difficult it is. And I think you said, well, also what is going to happen? That you might have said that in your response, because it's interesting you come on to there how it might be overcome, that because there's identifying struggles and difficulties, isn't there? But how might it change? And I suppose in terms of the finances, it would be some sort of grants or the college giving some sorts of contributions or bursaries. I suppose there could be government could support people doing therapy training, but because it's most often a postgraduate, those things are usually paid for by people. Just the other thing to say though as well, when you say about paying for supervision at placements, that was not something that had to happen when I trained. I had 3 placements while I was training. Nobody paid for supervision, but I did know somebody who went into one of the places where I had a placement, and they were looking at ways to make it more financially viable. So what they introduced was charging the trainees who were working there for free for their supervision as a way of making money. So I think that's something that has come through much more since I was training. It wasn't something I had to factor in. But when you think about it, that somebody's giving their time for free anyway, and they're having to pay for supervision. How we've got into that situation, it's amazing, isn't it?
It's a bit wild, really, when you put it like that. I've not even considered it like that before. So when you put it like that, I'm paying to give my services, which when you state it like that, it just feels really backwards, if I'm honest. It's not transparent, and I would honestly argue, is it ethical as well? You are exploiting these trainee counsellors for their time, for their expertise, their knowledge, and you're making money from them, and they're actually having to then pay other costs. So to me, it's just something that when I have been training, it's not really sat well. And like we were saying before, something needs to change. But what are they doing? I think this is maybe the responsibility of these governing bodies like the BACP, UKCP, NCPS. And I see them right. I was actually reading an article by them yesterday as well about the struggles of, I think, Black counsellors in the profession. And I was reading it and I thought, this is great, but what are you doing about it? How are you making this a more appealing profession to people who have these different protected characteristics, whether it's social class or race or sexuality? You might be writing about it and saying there's an issue, but personally, I don't see any action on the back of that. So I would love to know what they're doing to help.
Yes, what's actually happening to change it. I think you can see in BACP's magazine and conferences that there is more representation, don't they? And the kind of articles that are there, but that's within existing members, isn't it? It's not necessarily an outward-facing thing to people who are thinking of coming in.
Yes.
What's it been like working and fulfilling the course commitments as well for you? So doing the placements, doing the work, doing the lectures, and just out of interest, how was that set up as far as, how much of the week and what were the commitments, the time commitments?
So if I look at my work week at the minute, I work 4 days a week, but I compress my hours, so I still work full time. I then, on a Monday, I finish work at 6, that placement by 6:30 to work with a couple of clients. And then on a Wednesday, I have that off to go to uni. And sometimes I'll have supervision in the afternoon and then I'll go straight to placement again. And then the other part of my placement is on a Thursday. So again, I work till 6 and then start with clients at 6:30. So my work-life balance, I would say, has been quite thrown. Okay. Normally, I would love to be kind of going out running or going to the gym or just spending time with friends, which I still do, but I definitely don't have as much time for. And I think that has impacted my well-being a bit because I'm used to being such an active person, and a lot of my self-care relies on those types of things. So for me, it has been hard. It's been really hard to juggle everything all at the same time. And then when you factor in the 3,000 word essays that I've got to write as well, it's difficult. It is. And I think I'm not sure how do you fix that, especially for someone earlier in their career. I think there's other people on my course, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind us saying that, they're retired or they have reduced hours at work. So in terms of time, it is slightly easier for them. And I'm quite envious that they have all that time just to spare.
Sure. Mm.
So it feels like I do have to work kind of extra hard because I'm trying to prove myself in the workplace and I'm trying to gain this qualification and also further my career. But it's one of those things as well that I've got to tell myself, this situation at the moment, it is temporary.
Totally.
It's a means to an end right now. And once I'm qualified and it's done.
Yeah.
So, and I'm near the end now. So it's just kind of that last little.
Yeah. And I do think, it is very different being in practice or employed. It is and as you say, it feels like a lot going through it, doesn't it? And then it goes past like anything else in life. And in my experience, there's that wonderful new world opens up of being a therapist, and if you do run your own business and all those kind of things, which is all has its challenges, of course, but it's also exciting and just a different way of being and working. And so yeah, and you're near the, as you say, very near the end. You've nearly done
I've
it.
nearly done it. And I think sometimes I found this with my last degree as well. I find that the last part is often the hardest part because you're so exhausted and you've been doing this for so long that it's kind of, I don't know, for me anyways, all the stress kind of builds in that last hurdle where you think, God, I'm so close, but I feel almost so far away. So I'm really excited and just to kind of see what's next. And what will happen in the next chapter for me, and being able to pursue my interests as well when it comes to the career, I think is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what you might like to specialize in?
So I think one of the things I'm really interested in is relationships. So relationships, people who are single and place a lot of their self-worth on dating and relationships. So that's something that I think I would love to do a bit more CPD in because we've not done a great deal of couples therapy or relationships and things like that. So that's something that I really want to pursue. I think as well, currently my full-time job, I work in a corporate setting and I really enjoy that and I do a lot of the well-being stuff. So I think getting into sort of corporate wellness, corporate safeguarding, corporate therapy and counselling would be of a great interest to me as well. So I'm excited just to see like a passion and an interest in relationships and couples counselling. But then, yeah, I've got this also other kind of passion, which I think will be my main one with the corporate side of stuff.
And the ability to combine both is a great thing. That kind of portfolio career that people can have.
And to be honest, I think that most of the time when I speak to people at work in that corporate setting, a lot of them come with relationship problems. They've fallen out with the husband or the wife or the partner. So I think there is a bit of a mix or a
Of course.
meeting of the two. I think you're always going to get a bit of everything when it's in the corporate world because people bring their personal issues that are affecting their professional lives.
So did you say you have a Wednesday off to do your kind of course commitments and things? The lectures, are they not during the day? They're evening, are they? To fit around people doing full-time jobs, or are they during the day?
They're during the day. So the lectures that I have, currently they're in the morning. It used to be a full day, but they give us half of that day back to do our placement and try and fit in those hours because a lot of people on my course are really struggling to fit in their hours at the minute. So we've actually been told at our college that we can't graduate this year unless we have those placement hours, which on the one hand, makes sense. We haven't finished the course, but it's not always our fault because of the amount of do not attends that you get. I think knowing this from the college's perspective, maybe they could have allowed us to start placement a little bit earlier.
So you do need to be working part-time in order to do the course. I always assumed in some ways that courses were done in the evening. But I was talking to this guy actually, and he was saying that he spoke to somebody at Regent's College and it's a Friday. So it's all day on a Friday, which they're assuming that people aren't working Fridays or can suddenly stop doing that. I think now things are more flexible, aren't they, as far as compressed hours and perhaps part-time working. But it is interesting, the assumption that's made that in order to do this, because you would need to for a few years, wouldn't you? People are needing to cut a day out of their week. It's not structured weekends and evenings, which is what was. It was evenings and weekends, so people could work a 9 to 5 full-time job if a full-time job is 9 to 5 anymore, but
Yeah.
around that. So, but yeah, it is a requirement to not be working for you.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I think that's, another part of what makes it inaccessible for a lot of people, because a lot of people do need to work. Honestly, I've been really lucky, obviously, with mine who've been pretty understanding that I came in and said, I do need this day off, but I don't want to miss out on this salary.
Mm.
I compress my hours. So they were fairly understanding with me.
Mm. Because I suppose there's also the potential for asking an employer to compress hours and say, so I can do this course. And they might be thinking, what's your plan at the end of the course? Of course, it's a few years of continuing at the company, but I did try and go back to the law firm and suggest working part-time hours. I also said, so I can set up my private practice. And they did say no. When I think about it, I'm not surprised. They said no in some ways, because it was clear what my intention was after a couple of years. But yeah, so it is I mean, there are courses, as I said, that will be evening and weekend, so that it's unaffected by full-time working. Just about the placement hours, I think you said you do see clients 3 evenings a week then. How many clients do you see?
So currently, I think my limit is around about 7 a
Mm.
week. So it would be, I want to say two on a Monday, three on a Wednesday, and then two on a Thursday. But it completely varies from week to week. Like, you're probably so well aware of the fact that people sometimes just don't turn up. And I think it took me a while, especially while training, to sort of accept that, because in my head I was like, but I need to get my hours, and it would really frustrate us. So that was something that I had to take to supervision, to not let those feelings of frustration impact my clients. I need to get 100 hours. So again, I appreciate as well that that's quite lucky. I know a lot of people that it's a requirement to get 450 for their course, whereas mine is just 100. So that's great. It was capped at 6. But my lecturers came to me and said, we are pretty comfortable with the way that you work. We've got a lot of confidence in you. So we wouldn't mind if you did want to extend how many hours you do,
Great.
which I was grateful for, because, like I say, it kind of adds a buffer for the people that don't attend during the week. So, although my limit is 7, on average, I'll probably say about 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And out of interest, what is the placement? So is it so general what people are coming through with, or something specific?
So currently I'm at Newcastle University. So it's working with university students. It's a mixed age range, but mainly it is kind of people in their early 20s or even late teens. Anxiety, relationships, sometimes bereavements, and just academic stress, things like that. That's what I would typically see.
Okay. And you're enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it. I really do. I think, like I said before, the actually working with clients I love. And I was talking to my boyfriend about it not long ago, because I think I'd finished placement and I'd said, I have just left with a smile on my face. I met with 2 new clients tonight. They both really opened up, and it was just amazing. And he kind of laughed and he said, the things that you probably deal with and you leave with a smile on your face. And I said, but I don't think you understand how much of an honor it is to be trusted with some of these issues, and how happy that makes me, to be in that position of privilege with someone's problems.
Completely.
So yeah.
Yeah, because there is a perception, and some of it can be difficult in terms of things that we hear, I think. But there is some people would say, I don't know how you sit and listen to people's problems the whole time. That must be really, really difficult. And certain aspects, as with anything, are difficult. But it's not that it just stays as it is when somebody brings something. The whole idea, isn't it, is that when something's brought into relationship, it changes. It can change. That's the reason that we do it, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it isn't a sort of masochistic act. I always think, to be therapist, actually, I would not have left something that didn't feel that great to go into something that doesn't feel great. It's because it is a really enjoyable, fulfilling job. Well, of course, with its challenges and difficulties, but it does sometimes sound a bit strange saying that, doesn't it, to people? Thinking,
Yeah.
how can you enjoy? sitting with people who are in such distress. But I think it's because when people bring it, that something happens, something changes.
Definitely. I think it's that moment when you can tell that this might be the first time that you've said this out loud, or in fact, the client has told you this is the first time I've ever said this. And it is a strange thing to say out loud like that. I enjoy that, and I enjoy it's not that I enjoy the distress that they bring it. It's just a really lovely moment to share with someone, of them being able to get something off their chest. And I think that's what it really comes down to. And I think for me, I love storytelling. I think that's probably the reason that I love this profession as well, is that I love hearing about people's stories.
Me too. Yeah, I love people telling stories, listening to stories, more stories all the time, isn't it? And it is. I always find that thing as well, that even if there's sort of five or six clients that I would say, it's very different seeing individual clients than it would be to work, say, 5 or 6 hours in a law firm. The time really flies, because it's always a different. There are similarities between human beings as well, but the kind of different stories, different energy. The day goes so quickly, I find. Yeah,
it does. I find that I'm on placement, and I've blinked and one client's over, and then the next client's coming. I've got to quickly type up my notes, thinking, where did that time go? And then the next one's in, and before you know it, I'm getting ready to leave, and I just think, God, like I love that. That went over so quickly. It's not like a normal, I was going to say it's not like a normal job where I'm watching the clock. I literally am watching the clock to see when they're done with their 50 minutes, because of that limited time, don't they, before the next one comes in.
Yeah.
It's not like you're watching the clock because you're dying for it to be over.
Totally. Yeah.
It is an amazing career choice. It really is. And I think once I can get past the stress of training,
yes,
then it's something that I know that I'm going to feel really called to. I'm going to be so grateful that I actually chose this, and I'm really excited.
Fantastic. Just about the academics and the essays and that kind of thing. I think you mentioned 3,000 word essays. How many have you had to do? Was it 2 in the year? There's usually a kind of theories one and one that's about a personal process.
My first year was more about the theory side of things. And it was either 4 or 5 essays. And then this year, I think I've written 2 already. I think I've got one due in this next week coming up, and at least another one. So that would be 4 in total. And I think the minimum amount of words has been 2,000 this year.
Okay.
So
how have you found that? How have you found the writing of it, and the reading and those kind of things from a time commitment point of view?
Tough. So for me, I am dyslexic as well. So I do find like the general writing of essays possibly a bit harder than most. I still really enjoy it, but I do find that when I'm having to read an article, especially, and some of them can be pretty dry, let's be honest. I do find it quite difficult. But overall, it's just something that I think I know I've got to do it, so I've done it type of thing. I think because I've already got a full undergrad degree in counselling as well, it has made writing these essays quite a bit easier. And I know that sometimes on my course, because other people know I've already got this counselling degree, a lot of them, they assume that I know everything. I don't. But a lot of them will kind of come to us about, can you explain this a little bit better, or things like that. So, or just thinking that I know a bit more than maybe I do.
You mentioned, I think, your age and the kind of going into counselling as a career straight after a degree and that kind of thing. How have you found your age on the course and the demographics? In my mind, again, going back to training, lots of people were older. When I was speaking to Harry, he did say there was quite a range of people. Also, he said that on the foundation course, people could be any age to do the foundation, but when you go into the diploma, they don't generally accept anybody under the age of 28. I thought it might be. I vaguely remember that from looking at the course requirements years ago. But age is an interesting one, isn't it? What's your experience been of it?
Yeah, age is a really interesting one. I think it's so interesting that you say that thing about not letting anyone go further unless they're 28, because well, is that not straight up age discrimination?
Well, I just think as well, if you're looking at, then people think all sorts of things and the ways that they would express being a therapist and in all sorts of different ways, wouldn't they? But I quite like the element that having a regulated nervous system as well with clients and all this is a really important thing.
Mm.
People that have grown up in very well loved environments, have very well loved beings, are absolutely going to be able to do that from the age of 19 if that's been the situation, whereas somebody who has not at the age of 35 or 40 might still struggle with it. So it's really quite an arbitrary thing, isn't it? It's, I guess, what would they say, some sort of life experience thing if you're talking about relationships, maybe to have gone through establishing relationships, breakup of relationships.
I mean, in terms of my course, especially in my first year, so in my first year we had a smaller group, so we had 2 cohorts that were doing the same sort of degree course, running side by side but not mixed. So certainly in my first year there was around about 7 or 8 of us in this class. I was definitely the youngest and I really enjoyed it, and I think that's because, one, everyone was so lovely. 2, I think that I was surrounded by all these people who had or were having very fulfilling careers, very diverse careers. So, there was people who'd been with the police or prison officers, someone from the army, someone who was a hairstylist, and it was really, really varied. And I think to be able to learn from their stories, the ones that they were telling about their career and the experience that they had, I found that great, and I loved being the baby of the class because they would all just look after us. But I think, there was probably points where they relied on me as well, and sort of my background and my knowledge and of being a young person, or things like social media, even things like if we had to do a presentation, I'm very well versed in Canva, so I'm able to kind of maybe create the presentation, not in terms of all the content because like they're all fabulous and they all know a lot and will all contribute, but in terms of like actually using the technology and things like that, then maybe that's where my expertise would come in quite handy to everyone else. And one of my lecturers is actually quite young as well, so it was funny in that first year when she might reference things that were, I suppose, like TikTok things or whatever, things that had been on Instagram, and it might be a bit of silence in the room and we would have a silence, like a laugh at the side. So yeah, I think that was also probably quite nice for her to have that in the room. But yeah, overall I would say that my experience of it hasn't been a bad one at all.
Good. Yeah, I do remember somebody saying to me, gosh, he probably would have been in his mid to late 20s and was doing counselling training. He wasn't talking about the training itself, but one thing he did say was that what would it be like to sit with a man his dad's age as a client? That was the thing that I think he was thinking about. I don't think necessarily from the point of view of what it would be like for him as a therapist, but what that guy would think of sitting with somebody his son's age, kind of thing. Those were the sorts of thoughts that he was having. And I wonder what impact that has or effect it has. It's going to be different for different people.
Well, actually, yeah, I suppose that's sort of triggered a memory for me doing my triad work. And it's something that I've taken to supervision with my placement, is when I do work with people who are older than me, sometimes it makes me feel a little bit inferior, because I think, God, like what do they want to know from me? I'm just, I'm just a girl in my 20s. I don't have as much life experience as them. I hope that, I can meet their standards of what they're looking for. But I think at the end of the day, I've done a lot of training for this and I know my stuff, and I think I need to be a little bit more confident. And I think that's what I would say to all kind of young counselors and therapists is, you've trained in this for a reason, and they're coming to you because they know that you're the expert as well.
Absolutely. And it's a good co-regulating relationship, which can be provided whether somebody's 25, 45 or 65 or not, I suppose. There is that, it's the perception thing possibly for clients, isn't it? If they're looking on a website or choosing, it would be interesting to hear, do people look for somebody roughly their age? Or so, as you say, the people that come through will be people that know your age and want that. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah. And I mean, when I do work with younger people, I do find that a lot of them do quite enjoy my age.
Sure. No, I'm sure. Yeah.
Sometimes I had one person say, I think that you'll just get it. And I think that's the annoying thing when it comes to, people saying that, oh, they can't trade unless they're over a certain age. And it's just, well, these are the people that are going to relate to this client group. So really, you're creating a gap here and making it maybe not as accessible for certain people because they want to see someone who's like them. And because everyone makes a judgment, first impressions, we think, well, you'll get it because you're just like me. And interestingly as well, I did have one client who kept on referencing TikTok. And every time they said it, they would go, but do you understand what that is? Do you know what that is? And I'd say, I'm not that much older than you. Come on. So maybe there is this assumption that like counselors are older and they should be older. But yeah, I mean, there was a couple of references I didn't understand and it was a little bit embarrassing for me, but I just pretended that I was how to say, yes, I do understand. I'm not that old.
Well, I suppose there is the protection on some level of parent, isn't it? Good mother, good father. But maybe that's been an age thing. Maybe that isn't necessary for therapy. It's about a relationship, isn't it? It's about a co-regulating relationship, I think. It doesn't need an older person. But I guess just traditionally it has been. So I'm only saying that, not that I'm do a lot with psychodynamic, but it is that sort of good mother, good father, bad father kind of thing. Might suggest an age gap, but maybe that's all been talked about because it always was older people that did it. So it's interesting that things are changing there, I think.
Yeah. And as they should, I think. There's nothing wrong with being younger in this profession. There's a lot that probably young people have to offer as well.
Of course. Going back to placements, I did 3 placements during my training. What I do hear about placements now, I think perhaps because of funding situations, is that a number of the possibilities, a lot of placements might have shut down. I also think that there are a lot more training courses out there for counsellors and therapists. So there's probably more people looking for perhaps less placement. So what was that like for you? What was it like finding a placement?
So finding a placement for me was actually quite difficult and it was really stressful actually. So where my college is in Durham and I'm from Northumberland. So it's actually about a 45-minute drive to an hour. So all of the placements that they could recommend were based around Durham. So I felt kind of, okay, right, I've got to try and find one by myself here. So I contacted, I think, everyone in the area and just wasn't met with a lot of response or, we don't offer placements. So I find it really, really difficult. I think I had a couple of interviews, didn't hear back from them. And then eventually I contacted Newcastle University and they actually took on a lot of people. So the nights that I go, there's at least another maybe 5 students that are there and they're all different. So if you take that over the course of, I think it's 4 nights a week, it's about 20 placement counsellors that they've potentially got, which is a lot. So, that was a great kind of place for me to find one that wasn't too far away from home. And it was a great option for me. But it was really difficult. And I know a lot of people have really struggled to find placements, which if I'm referring back to earlier about how the college have said, well, if you don't get your hours in, you won't be able to graduate. I don't think they're taking into consideration how hard it is to actually find a placement and then do your hours as well on top of that. It's really, really hard. So yeah, again, it's kind of what's the answer to that if there's not the funding there, like you say.
Yeah, I guess more funding, isn't it? It's but that's yeah. How does that happen? You'd hope in terms of mental health and the importance of it and its profile and things that is increasing. But I also think it's the number of people who are training as well. I imagine that the number of placements will not have increased in accordance with that, I don't think. I guess it doesn't sound like it's necessarily that people won't get the placements. It's just they're starting them late because they're difficult to get. So in order to get the hours to qualify, it's taking people longer, which has implications, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, in my opinion, what probably needs to happen there is that the colleges start prepping students to find placements a lot earlier than what they're doing. So I would even say, as far as at the very start, you start looking for a placement and getting in touch with people, asking when the interview process is, and just finding out a little bit more information, so that when, by the time you come to get your green light letter from the college or institution to say you're ready, you can just go. It's not a case of, we'll give you the green light letter, now go and look for placements in your second year, when really it's a bit of a race for time at that point.
Completely. It can really drift, can't it? And the green light letter would be the letter that your college writes to say that you're ready to do a placement or okay to do a placement.
Yes, that's the one, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I mean, that's great advice. And generally, it's so interesting to hear your experience of it. I think people are going to find that really valuable. For anybody coming into the profession, I always ask people whether they would have any particular advice or a piece of advice for people thinking of training or coming in.
I think I would say do your research. Do a lot of research before you decide to do this profession. I think find out about things like, are there any hidden costs? How much time am I going to have to give up? How will this interfere with my life now as well? So that you can prepare for it, because I think preparation is key. If you're prepared, I think you're more likely to be able to take care of like your own stress levels and your well-being during the course. One of the things that I wish I had done was maybe reach out to counsellors already in the profession and find out a little bit more about those things from their point of views and their perspectives, get some first-hand experience from them in terms of like their stories. To be honest, I think one of the things I would say as well to anyone in the profession, start using social media and start kind of like talking about yourself, talking about your knowledge and your expertise, because I think there's a massive shift on social media at the minute where younger people are a lot more interested in counselling and therapy and taking care of their own mental health. And I think if you can reach that audience, you set yourself up well for when you do want to open up your private practice.
And I think for two reasons, isn't it? It's potential clients as well, but it's also colleagues, other people that can refer and network. I'm not that keen on the word, but because interesting, it was LinkedIn that we met on, wasn't it? And I would have, when starting out, I would have put LinkedIn at the bottom of what I would, I don't know why, more drawn to Instagram perhaps or Facebook. But I think LinkedIn's really good, isn't it? I would now put it, well, YouTube, I'd probably put at the top, but I would put LinkedIn probably just below that in terms of investing time, because there's a lot of therapists on there, a lot of people on there. And if you're looking at within a corporate environment as well and wanting to at some point continue to work within that, it does have that leaning as well, doesn't it, LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. I think LinkedIn's a great one. And I think building up your professional persona on places like LinkedIn can provide a lot of opportunities. I wouldn't necessarily have got this opportunity to speak to you had I not have been on LinkedIn and been posting on it. And, there's been other people who I've met on LinkedIn who have been able to share their experiences, which I've been really grateful to hear about, because I think, it's not just me, or I've learned something from you. So honestly, I think if you can harness the power of any type of social media professionally, I think that's amazing. And I think that more people should be doing it as well to benefit their careers.
Fantastic. That's really helpful advice. Thank you. The other thing that I would always ask is life advice. Your favorite bit of life advice, what would that be?
My favorite piece of life advice is worry is a waste of the imagination. So Yeah, I really like that. I find it really powerful because I waste a lot of time worrying. And
Mm,
someone said to me, it's a waste of the imagination. You could be imagining the best possible outcome instead. So why are you wasting your time worrying about the worst possible outcome?
mm.
And that's something that's really stuck with me.
Completely, and fantastically acknowledges the presence of the imagination to create, isn't it?
Yeah.
Creative imagination. It's a yeah.
I think that really taps into sort of these negative thought patterns that we have, where we just create these scenarios about the future in
Mm.
our minds, when actually, what if the best thing happens?
Completely. And what does that look like? And yeah, brilliant advice. Definitely, I think. Yes. Well, thank you so much. We are sort of time wise about there, but it's just been amazing. I really appreciate you giving your time and being so open and honest and generous about your experience. I think it's going to be so valuable for people watching. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely to be on the channel.
That's okay. You take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.